Bolyán, a. Neolithic Mediterranean transgression as a facilitator of Sumerian enclaves, Cronus, Nut, An, U. 2026. Myth and Cataclysm, Impressions of the Holocene Mediterranean Transgression in Hittite, Greek, and Egyptian Traditions. Abstract. The measurement of time and the recording of historical events in oral tradition differed fundamentally from modern, linear chronology. Preliterate societies defined eras using biological metaphors, e.g., Vainamoinen turning grey in the Kalevala as he reaches the shore, or pivotal technological and environmental boundaries. This study examines the hypothesis that the drastic rise in water levels in the Mediterranean basin during the Holocene-Flandrian transgression caused an ecological catastrophe that fundamentally determined Bronze Age migration processes, state formations, and technological responses in the Near East and the Aegean. The Hittite Qumran cycle, the Greek Uranus Chronos Zeus myths, the Egyptian Osiris Nut Mot concepts, and the Atlantis and Dilmun narratives are all mythologized reflections of this real environmental trauma and the human responses to it, e.g., Cyclopean coastal defense technologies. 1. The Neolithic environmental context, the Flandrian transgression. No, the Neolithic marine transgression, the post-glacial global sea level rise, also known as the Flandrian transgression, was by no means limited to the Nile Delta. The process radically reshaped the entire Mediterranean basin. At the beginning of the Neolithic, New Stone Age, roughly 11,500 years ago, the sea level was still about 5,060 meters below its current level, and it reached its modern height by the end of the era, approximate 6,0005,000 years ago. 1. This drastic rise in water levels swallowed vast land areas, completely redrawing coastlines. 1.1 The most important affected regions and the situation of Cyprus in this period. The coastlines of the Adriatic, Aegean, and Lebanese seas. The Adriatic Sea, this region suffered one of the most spectacular losses. At the last glacial maximum, LGM, the northern basin of the Adriatic was a plain that could be crossed completely on dry land too. During the Neolithic, the water steadily advanced northward. Entire river valleys, former Neolithic hunter-gatherer camps, and early farming sites were submerged, forming today's shallow northern Adriatic basin and the jagged archipelago of the Croatian coast. The Aegean Sea, in the Aegean region, the rising sea level created countless new islands. Peninsulas and high ground that previously belonged to the mainland became isolated, forming the modern landscape of the Cyclades and other Aegean archipelagos. 3. Many Neolithic coastal settlements now lie 1,030 meters deep underwater. The Lebanese, Levantine, coast, here, the continental shelf is steeper, so the sea did not penetrate as deeply into the interior of the mainland as in the Adriatic, but the coastal plains narrowed significantly. The best evidence for this is at Lat Yam, located off the Israeli coast in early Neolithic, ppnb, village that remained completely intact but now lies 812 meters below the sea surface. 4. 1.2 How large was Cyprus in the Neolithic? Cyprus is a highly interesting case, as it was never connected to the mainland, Anatolia or the Levant, even during the lowest glacial sea level drops. It always remained an island, surrounded by deep marine trenches. 5. Period sea level relative to present surface area of Cyprus and distance from the coast. End of the Ice Age. Br. Approximate 14,000 years ago, 100,120 meters lower. The island's surface area was significantly larger, particularly its eastern extension, the Karpas Peninsula, which stretched far toward the mainland. The shortest distance to the mainland was only 3,040 kilometers, and an intermediate stepping stone island also existed. Early Neolithic. Br. Approximate 10,500 years ago, 5,060 meters lower. Due to the transgression, the intermediate small island sank. The surface area of Cyprus began to decrease, its coastlines shrank, and its distance from the mainland increased to 60 kilometers. Middle Late Neolithic. BR, approximate 7,0006,000 years ago, close to the modern level, 2 to 3 meters, the island reached its well-known modern extent of 9,251 kilometers and its current shape. Due to the flooding of coastal strips, traces of the island's earliest coastal human settlements, for example, around the Akrotiri Peninsula, are now also partially underwater or located right on the modern coastline. The inundations therefore represented a global and basin-wide environmental change, from which Neolithic communities had to continuously retreat further inland or to higher elevations. 2. Ecological catastrophe and the Sumerian expansion, Uruk period. This large-scale ecological cataclysm and the drastic narrowing of coastlines created the political conditions for the expansion of the Uruk period, approximate 40003100 BCE. Due to the advance of the sea, the indigenous populations along the Mediterranean and the Persian Gulf dwindled and became destabilized. This demographic vacuum was exploited by the Sumerians, who desperately needed raw materials, primarily timber, such as Lebanese cedars, and metals which were absent from the southern Mesopotamian alluvial plain. 6. The Sumerians established well-organized enclaves, colonies, of a commercial and military nature in the weakened coastal zones. It took the indigenous populations nearly 1,400 years to organize themselves socially and technologically to push back this early Sumerian migratory pressure. This consolidation finally succeeded with the mass spread of copper and bronze tools around 3200 BCE, when local cultures regained dominance over the coastal areas. 3. Theogonic myths as metaphors for transgression and technology. An exact impression of the historical ecological process described above can be found in Near Eastern and Aegean cosmogonic myths, where the struggle of divine generations symbolizes dominance over the sea, the destructive water, and technological development. 3.1 The connection between the Hittite Qumran cycle and Greek theogony. The Hittite Qumran cycle, especially the Song of Uli Kumi, the story of the stone monster, served as a direct model for the Greek Uranus Cronus Zeus myth recorded by Hesiod 7. In the myth, successive divine rulers, Alelu, Anu, Qumran, actually mark shifts in geopolitical eras. The supremacy of an Anu metaphorizes the expansion and cultural dominance arriving from Mesopotamia, Sumer. The castration of Cronus and Qumran in the myth, the Copper Age, appears as a temporal reference point, timing. When Cronus castrates Uranus, or Qumran castrates Anu, the retreat of the sea and the curbing of chaotic water masses take place. The removal of procreative power signifies the limitation of the sea's destructive, all-consuming capacity. As soon as copper tools appeared, the indigenous people became capable of damming the waters and halting external migration, thereby reclaiming their lost territories. 3.2 The Rhea myth and Cyclopean technology. A crucial moment is the myth of Rhea, who hides the infant Zeus from her husband, the child-devouring Cronus, by disguising him with stones, a rock. This motif is a direct reference to the invention of the Cyclopes. In mythology, the Cyclopes build massive rock walls without mortar, Cyclopean masonry. In historical reality, after 4500 BC, through technological advancement, humanity began to consciously push back the sea and protect harbors using artificially transported stone blocks, breakwaters, and dams. The substitution of Zeus with a stone is a metaphor for the construction of coastal stone dams. The rock protects the new generation against the consuming Cronus, the marine transgression. 4. Resolving the Atlantis, Dilmun, and Osiris mysteries. The transgression that radically rewrote the map of the Mediterranean basin, followed by the subsequent Sumerian expansion, deeply confounded chroniclers and archaeologists of later Greek and Near Eastern eras. Plato's Atlantis narrative, as a flourishing island empire swallowed by the sea, and the Mesopotamian concept of Dilmun, the paradise-like, pure land beyond the sea, can actually be traced back to the same historical trauma, the Aegean and Levantine coastal civilizations submerged during the Neolithic transgression, and the memory of the early Sumerian trade colonies that occupied them. 8. Since many Neolithic coastal settlements still lie 1,030 meters underwater today, such as Atlat Yam or the Aegean Shallows, people of later eras rightfully believed that once glorious empires had sunk into the sea in the immediate vicinity of Greece and the Levant. 4.1 Egyptian and Levantine parallels, Osiris, Mot, Nut. The struggle against the transgression can also be detected in Egyptian and Canaanite mythology. Nut and Osiris, the cyclical struggle between Nut, the sky goddess, who is sometimes the bearer of the all-encompassing cosmic waters, and Osiris, the god of vegetation, but also of the flood and the underworld waters, models the balance between chaos and order. The dismemberment and resurrection of Osiris correspond to the flooding of lands by the sea, followed by their reclamation through technology, dams, canals. Mot, in Phoenician Canaanite mythology, Mot is the god of death and aridity, but also the all-consuming whirlpool, similar to Cronus. The Hittite and Egyptian traditions highlight that as soon as it became certain that the Mediterranean was no longer a Cronisian monster or an engulfing power because human dam construction and the use of metals kept it within bounds, political balance was restored. In the myths, the ancestors, primeval causes, passed down the stories of destructive, consuming powers, Mot, Cronus, Nut, so that future descendants would not grow complacent, but would instead remain technologically prepared for another potential marine transgression and the subsequent waves of migration. Sources 1 Fairbanks, R.G., 1989. A 17,000 year glacial-eustatic sea level record, influence of glacial melting rates on the Younger Dryas event and deep ocean circulation. Nature, 342, 6250, 637-642. 2 Lambic, K, Purcell, A, Funder, S, Cager, K, Larson, E, Mahler, P, 2006. Constraints on the late Wakes-Elian ice sheet of Eurasia from sea level records and shoreline positions. Quaternary Science Reviews, 25, 11-12, 1075-1086. 3 Parissa Rades, C, Conus Boleatus, G, 2003. A Review of the Late Quaternary Evolution of the Aegean Sea. Marine Geology, 196, 1-2, 45-61. 4 Galili, E, Weinstein-Everin, M, Hershkovitz, I, Gopher, A, Kisloff, M, Lerna, O. Horwitz, L.K., 1993. Atlat Yam, a prehistoric site on the sea floor off the Israeli coast. Journal of Field Archaeology, 20, 2, 133-157. 5 Ammerman, A.J., Ntinu, M., 2013. Cyprus Before History, From the Earliest Foragers to the First Farmers. Journal of Mediterranean Archaeology, 26, 2, 110-132. 6 Algaze, G., 1993. The Uruk World System, The Dynamics of Expansion of Early Mesopotamian Civilization. University of Chicago Press. 7 Güterbach, H.G., 1951. The Song of Oli Kumi, Revised Text of the Hittite Version of a Hurrian Myth. Journal of Cuneiform Studies, 5, 4, 135-161. 8 Zanger, E., 1992. The Flood from Heaven, Deciphering the Atlantis Legend. Sidgwick Jackson.